move mountains. We gon' walk it out and move mountains. And I'll rise like the day. I'll rise up.
We are co-chairs for the 2018 Voter Awareness Week. So we wanted to formally welcome you guys and just want you guys to really be a sponge and take in everything that you guys will be.
And enlighten us on our journey, looking back in the past on the rights that we have and we fought for our rights. And bringing it home today, bringing it home. Bringing it home as far as our generation, as far as how active, how we understand our rights and our amendment, and how it applies to us even being at a HBCU and understanding the culture. So this is not only to educate, but to start the conversation of the day that we are in, because I'm not too far removed from the senior students of Bethune-Cookman to know the era that we're living in and the challenges that we face and the things that we need to talk about that in some generation before us is not so comfortable to talk about. But that's how we cross bridges, is to really put it out on the table, get our wisdom from our elders, but really come together as this generation to see how we can help and impact our universities and communities to vote.
Let us pray. To the most wise God, we come right now simply to say thank you for all that you've done. Thank you for your grace and mercy. Thank you for allowing us to come here together, to gather in your name, God, and to discuss these issues that are constantly being faced and challenged in America. To discuss what's so important, God. We ask that today be informative, that today touch somebody's heart and somebody's mind, to go out and share this message, God. For us to be challenged and behooved to start voting, to start getting engaged in what's going on in America and abroad. So God, we love you, we adore you, we thank you. In Jesus' name we do pray. Amen.
Amen.
Faculty, staff, we have in the room, and outside community, thank you guys for being here today. For the 2018 Voter Awareness for Bethune-Cookman University, the Vote Truth to Power. Today is a very important day where you will gain insight from two local activists and leaders. The first being Alicia Garza, the founder of Black Lives Matter, and Dr. Baskerville, the founder and president of NAFEO, which is very outstanding in my eyes. I'm actually going into higher education, so I follow your work, so thank you so much.
Thank you.
No, thank you. So at this time, I will call up next to the podium Ms. Nia Johnson to start reading the bios. Thank you.
Dr. Lezli Baskerville is a lawyer in the United States and is the president and CEO of the National Association for Equal Opportunity in Higher Education. Dr. Baskerville was born in Montclair, New Jersey, to Marjorie Baskerville and Charles W. Baskerville. Her mother was a teacher and a social worker, and her father was a marketing executive. She was born an identical twin to Dr. Renee E. Baskerville. Baskerville currently lives in Washington, D.C., and graduated from Montclair High School. She earned her bachelor's degree from Douglas Residential College in New Jersey. She earned her JD from Howard University School of Law in Washington, D.C. in 1979. She graduated cum laude and was trained as a constitutional rights lawyer. She graduated from the Executive Management Program for Minority Directors at Northwestern University's Kellogg School of Management. For 10 years between 1989 and 1999, Dr. Baskerville managed a private legal and legislative services collective, the Baskerville Group, then, from 1999 until 2003. She was Vice President for Government Relations for the College Board, and she was the Chief Executive Officer of the Washington, D.C. office and oversaw many programs. She served as co-chair of the Pathways to College Network, and she also helped lead the design of the College Board's Equity Initiative, as well as the National Dialogue of Student Financial Aid. She served as the Executive Director of the National Black Leadership Roundtable and also serves as the Appellate Counsel at the Lawyers Committee for Leadership Roundtable. Lawyers Committee for civil rights under law. For 20 years, she served pro bono for the National Association of Equal Opportunity in Higher Education. Additionally, she served as National Legislative Counsel for the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. She also was an administrative appeal judge in Washington, D.C. In 2004, Baskerville became the president and CEO of the National Association for Equal Opportunity in Higher Education. She was its first female president, and was also the first person to lead the organization who is not a current president of a black college or university. Amen. She serves on the Department of Homeland Security's Academic Advisory Commission, as well as the HBCU Capital Finance Board and the STEM for Us Board. Baskerville was named one of the 100 women leaders in STEM by STEM Connector, and she was named one of the 25 women making a difference by diverse issues in higher education. AOL Black Voices named her one of the top 10 black women in higher education, and Ebony Magazine named her one of the top 100 most influential association leaders for 6 straight years. She has received an honorary doctorate from Benedict College, and in 1998, she was inducted into the Douglas Society by Douglas College. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I present to you Dr. Lezli Baskerville.
Wildcats, stay woke. Stay woke, Wildcats, and vote. I am just humbled and privileged to be here. I thank you so very much for your kind introductory remarks. I truly want to thank everyone who's in Student Services Office and who participated in putting together not just this forum this evening, but putting together the week of engagements, preparing to get down to the election, to understand all of the issues. And I'm just honored and privileged that we have our freshman class president here. We have the president of SGA. We've got all of you here tonight who have chosen to come out on a Saturday evening to hear what I was asked to talk about, and I'll tell you that in a minute. But I want to also acknowledge and thank First Lady Mrs. Grimes for interrupting her Saturday to be here. I'm humbled that you would choose to be here, and I know you had a full day. You were doing the Lord's work with the links, and we're just delighted that you came. Thank you so very much. And we have our Dean. Thank you, Madam Dean, for choosing to be here. So I'm privileged, humbled, and blessed to be here, and that you all chose to be here with me. I was asked to talk for 10 minutes about HBCUs, and then some about the urgency of now, why we have to vote, why when in such times as these we have a spiraling downward and a moral decay in the nation, the vote is so significant, and most especially to talk about why it's significant, what's at stake, and what will happen if we don't vote. So, did I fail to introduce or thank anyone that I should? If I do, it's an omission of the head and not the heart. So I also want to introduce Attorney Joy West, who is here. She's NAFEO's videographer, photographer, and poet laureate. She was also a colleague of President Grimes when he was a Reggie. He provided legal services for low-income families. He spent a lot of time working with families and young adults and others that I think really well equipped him for such times as these, because from the bench, he was bringing together all of his knowledge, all of his passions, and caring when people, many of them were at their lowest point, to uplift them and try to get them on a path. And so he knows the students, the communities, and others, and we're blessed to have him here. And on that note, I want to, before I get it to what I was asked to talk about for 10 minutes, and introductory remarks don't count, right? I want to thank you, the students, for standing up and for letting your voice be heard before the Board of Trustees when they were at a critical point of considering where to go next in terms of the presidency of President Grimes. And what you did took courage, and it took fortitude, strategy, a sense of confidence and caring, as well as humility. And I know he tremendously appreciates it. I didn't talk with him today, but I've read what he said. So thank all of you for standing up and letting your voice be heard. So, I'm President and CEO of NAFEO. NAFEO is the nation's only membership and advocacy association of 106 historically black colleges and universities, of which Bethune-Cookman is one. And it's also the advocacy association for some 80 predominantly black institutions, including Medgar Evers, where President Jackson served before he came down to be the president here. I've been privileged to align with NAFEO for a very long time. As was suggested in my introductory remarks, I was so passionate about HBCUs, their history, their mission, but importance, their potency, their centrality to the future of America, the future of our families, our communities, that I volunteered for 20 years as NAFEO's general counsel, and I litigated on behalf of the historically black colleges in 18 states, mostly with public historically black colleges where the states were not funding them equitably. Did that and then came inside. NAFEO is, its moniker is, we are the voice for blacks in higher education. We give voice to blacks in higher education in courts, congressional, in Congress, state legislatures, administrative bodies of corporations, anybody who has an interest in or is dealing with an issue that can either impact in an affirmative manner or have an adverse impact on HBCUs and their anchor communities, which are disproportionately African Americans. But I have to pause and say this, because this is a point that many people don't get right. HBCUs were founded some 180 years ago in the aftermath of the Civil War, and they were written into Congress. They are historically black institutions, meaning they were spawned because of the sorry history of segregation, discrimination, slavery in America. And so Congress defined them as institutions that have as part of their mission, the education of the progeny of the American slave system, the education of black people. But HBCUs have been open at all times, and they have a diverse student body. On average, HBCUs have about 70% African Americans and 30% non-African ancestry students enrolled, about 40% diversity in faculty. That's critically important, because when you think about allies and you think about resources and you think about how do you build the type of collaboration that was built here by NEXTGEN and the Office of Student Affairs and the other partners who were listed up there. The types of partnerships that are vitally important for moving our institutions forward and our students forward. We have to understand what HBCUs are. And so they were founded, they are historically black. There are 5 HBCUs that are not predominantly black. HBCUs are, there's no race criterion for them, and that also becomes important, my advocates, because every year in Congress and in state legislatures there's talk about shutting down HBCUs. You all have been asked, well, why do we need HBCUs today? Those institutions for those people. And the next step is we're going to shut them down because they're illegal, because they are for black people only. Well, there's no race criterion whatsoever. So they're richly diverse. They are disproportionately African ancestry students enrolled. They're disproportionately low-income first-generation students, but the doors have been open, and they will continue to be open to enroll anyone who believes in the mission of HBCUs. Now, HBCUs were founded out of the best of the African traditions. They were African, they are education, liberation, education theology institutions, meaning that they were founded to provide the pedagogy and all of the academic trainings, but also to make sure that they were preparing our students for liberation, preparing our students to uplift themselves, their families, their communities, and so forth. And they've been doing that. That has ebbed and flowed, but to a large part, that is a central part of what they're doing. And that's a central part of what I've seen here at Bethune-Cookman, which is one of the reasons that I was excited to accept the offer to come and talk with you for a little bit today. And so, education, liberation, education, theology, that's what we teach. We also try to spawn justice janissaries. And so if you're going to law school, we try to encourage all of our students who are studying law to learn the law, to be sure, but not to focus on judgeships, to focus on justice. And as you're learning, you have a responsibility to give back, to volunteer, as I did for 20 years, to make sure that the students, the last, the least, the locked out, left behind, are not stuck in the margins. The same thing with health professions. You have an outstanding nursing program here. The people who we are preparing in our schools, including Bethune-Cookman in health professions, are teaching healthy lifestyles, but they're integrating health of mind, body, and spirit. That's what we talk about when we talk about education, liberation. It's the cornerstone of HBCUs. So I know there's a lot of talk these days about HBCUs rising. And when you see videos and you hear stories and on, most people talk about HBCUs, the small, underfunded institutions. But from my vantage, and I've been in this business for more than 3 decades, HBCUs today are thriving, and it's harvest time for HBCUs, and I'm going to tell you why. HBCUs are 3% of American colleges and universities, just 3% of American colleges and universities. They are graduating 60% of African Americans who are graduating in health professions today. They're graduating 42% of African Americans in the sciences, technology, engineering, mathematics, 42% in STEM, 50% of African American teaching professionals, sisters who want to be a teacher, 50% who go into public education coming from HBCUs, and the list go on. So we're punching way above our weight. And HBCUs are in what I call the belly of the beast. HBCUs are in the areas of communities of high distress and least advantage, and so our incubators, our laboratories are our communities, our service to the community. And I know one of the missions or the mantras here is, you come in to learn, you depart to serve. And while you're here, you're serving. That is totally aligned with what the mission of HBCUs and what they're doing today. And so at this time, when people are talking about the cost of college, HBCUs on average containing costs. Our schools are containing costs. They are graduating disproportionate percent of African Americans in the growth and high needs areas. They are a $15 billion short-term business. So we don't have to go anywhere and hang our head and talk about, whoa, these institutions are thriving, they're serving. America cannot thrive economically, socially, in terms of wealth development, in terms of inner cities, in terms of closing the attainment gap, the healthcare gap, the wealth gap, any of the gaps that we have to close without HBCUs and without you, my sons and daughters who are on the front lines, who are preparing today to lead the nation from where we are to where we want to be. So please be mindful of that, and when you tell the story, tell the story. If you want to stay, I know the rising thing, it flows well, and I like it, but the reality is it's harvest time, and HBCUs are thriving. America cannot realize her goals without strong HBCUs. There would be no black middle class without HBCUs. There would be no ability of America to realize her excellence goals or her diversity goals in the workforce, in entrepreneurship, and so forth without HBCUs. So that's what I do. I work for you. I'm privileged to work for you. I wake up every morning. You are my raison d'etre. I feel as excited today about what I do every day as I did when I started. But at this particular time, and I have my 8 minutes, so I'm going to take 2 more minutes, I want to talk about voting. So the 18 to 29-year-old vote constitutes 21% of the overall vote. In 2016, the 18 to 29-year-olds voted below their numbers. They voted so low that they went from 21% of the student vote down to 18%. But the worst part is HBCU students disengaged disproportionately. HBCU students failed to vote abysmally. And the problem is, if we sit on the sidelines and we don't vote, when we get people in office who are trying to unravel all the regulations that have been passed over the years, the civil rights laws, which requires that people have policies in place to address sexual assault, sexual harassment, Title VI, which talks about equality in education, all of those programs are unraveling. And so we missed the boat because we didn't vote. And this year, I know with programs like that, which you're doing, we're going to do a better job. We're going to get out, and because of the education and the energizing of the communities that you're doing, we're going to vote, but we're also going to take a lot of people with us to vote. We have to put the skids on this downward spiraling. The people who are in office who want to build walls and lock people out and lock people up, we're going to reverse that. We're a community. HBCUs are grounded in educating people about the interconnectivity and interdependence of men and women. We are people who talk about the importance of coming together as one group, indivisible, respecting the differences, respecting the voice, giving voice to people from all races, all backgrounds, all ethnicities, all stripes, so that people can be themselves, they can find their true selves within the big tent. So we're going to go out in large numbers, and we're going to put the skids up under the types of policies and programs, the types of officials. And so you're going to vote. And why are you going to vote? Because it's the very most important thing you can do. Your voting will determine whether or not, while you're in school, you have student loans or student grants. Your vote will determine when you get out whether you can get a housing loan. It'll determine whether you have health care. It will determine whether you're in a segregated community, because the laws talking about equal opportunities are being eroded. The regulations are being eroded. And so it also decides who gets how much of what, when, where, how, and why. Who gets how much of what, when, where, how, and why. Whether you have loans versus grants, whether you have taxes for the top 1%, or whether you can move along the bottom 20% to the top 20%. An important data point, HBCUs are moving the persons in America from the bottom 20% to the top 20%, as documented by Dr. Spriggs, who was the chair of the economics department at Howard. We are doing awesome things, but we can't do what we need to do if we don't go out. And I know as we're in this climate with moral decay and disaggregation, some people want to sit on the sidelines, but we can't. Sister Michelle Obama, First Lady Obama, said, they go low, we go high. What we're going to say today, in addition to our vote the truth, vote the power. When they go low, we go vote. When they go low, we go vote. We're going to vote, and we're going to take everybody to the polls on November 6th, because we can, and we must be the difference. Now's the time to vote the power. And when they go low, we go vote. When they go low, we go vote. Low, vote, low, vote. When they go low, we go vote. Early voting starting on November 3rd? Today?
Yes, today.
Today. Did anybody vote today? Okay. Well, you all need to vote early, and then, I don't want to say vote often, but vote early. And Saturday, November 3rd, there's an effort, I guess, that you all are supporting. Whatever you do, get out and vote. And vote the power. Yes, ma'am.
Our students will be voting together
Oh, awesome.
on the 30th, on Tuesday.
Thank you.
Led by the president. We're hoping that we will be taking at least 500 plus students marching to the polls on the 30th,
Okay.
Tuesday. Is that right, Mr. President? Okay, thank you.
Thank you for all that you do through NAFEO for HBCU. We definitely appreciate your work. So my name is Arthur Wright, and I serve as the Chief Justice for the Student Government Association here at Bethune-Cookman. And today I have the pleasure of introducing our next speaker, Ms. Alicia Garza. Ms. Garza is an activist and writer who now lives in Oakland, California. Although she is organized around issues related to health, student services, and rights for domestic workers, as well as violence against trans and gender non-conforming people of color, she is best known as one of the 3 founders of the Black Lives Matter movement, created in 2013. Garza was born in Los Angeles, California on January 4th, 1981. She has a mixed race background. Her father is white and Jewish, while her mother is black. Garza describes herself as a queer social justice activist and a Marxist. In 2002, she graduated with a degree in anthropology and sociology at the University of California in San Diego. In 2008, she married her husband, Malachi Garza, who is a transgender male activist. In 2009, Garza served as the executive director for People Organized to Win Employment Rights, or POWER, for the San Francisco Bay Area. In 2011, Garza was also board chair for Rights to the City Alliance in Oakland, which fought for gentrification and police brutality. On February 26, 2012, when unarmed black teenager Trayvon Martin was fatally shot by neighborhood security guard George Zimmerman in Sanford, Florida, Garza took her frustration and rage to Facebook and crafted a post and first used the phrase, "Black Lives Matter." In 2013, Garza, along with Opal Tometi and Patrice Cullors, officially created the Black Lives Matter movement. The movement works to end the violence towards African Americans, particularly by the police and fights against the institutional issues of poverty and mass incarceration. Black Lives Matter is an ideology and political intervention in a world where black lives are systematically and intentionally targeted for demise. It is an affirmation of black folks' humanity and contributions to this society, and our resilience in the face of deadly oppression. The Black Lives Matter global network would not be recognized worldwide if it weren't for the folks in St. Louis and Ferguson who put their bodies on the line day in and day out, and who continue to show up for the Black lives. I would now like to introduce Miss Alicia Garza.
She's calling in.
Oh, she's calling in? Okay. She's gonna be on Skype.
Certainly really want to be a part of this process, and everything is at stake. I also just want to say that from the perspective of the Black Futures Lab, which is a new organization that we started in February of this year, that aims to make Black people powerful in every aspect of our lives, that we are incredibly excited to be in partnership with NEXTGEN and Black Lives Rising and Color Change and Blavity, really to work to turn out Black folks who are really the backbone of this country to reshape what democracy looks like in a very scary time. I know that Black Lives Rising and NEXTGEN have invested over $1 million in turning out young Black voters, understanding that the way that people talk about young people often is that we are the future. But I would say that the reason that this investment is so important is because we're the present, and all of the things that are happening in this country right now, I think are really in our hands to shift. And so it's super, super important that each of us is playing a role in not only making sure that we avoid the catastrophes that we're heading towards under this current administration, but also playing a role in making history and being able to say that we were active participants in reshaping what it is that's happening now, but bigger than that, pushing forward towards a world that we actually deserve, right? Pushing forward towards a country that can be forced to live up to the values that it espouses, pushing forward to make sure that Black lives actually do matter, pushing forward to make sure that this is a nation that can include everyone. And so that's really the reason that we're doing this work. And I want to say a couple more words just about some things that I hear that are kind of concerning to me about voting that I hope that you all kind of take very seriously as you're kind of mobilizing and activating your friends, your family, your peers, your enemies, whoever it is, right? And I know that there's a lot of kind of conversation out there right now. It happens every single election cycle, especially with Black folks, where folks talk about we kind of get what we deserve because we don't participate. And there's this narrative, right, that Black people, because Black people aren't turning out, that's really the reason that we have all of these challenges that we have today. And I want to say that that cannot be further than the truth. And I think that we should stop kind of perpetuating those myths. What is true is that if voting was not powerful, right, then people wouldn't be trying to stop us from doing it. So we know that even as flawed as our voting systems are, that it is the way that millions of people are able to participate in the decisions that impact our lives. And yet at the same time, we can't talk about turnout without talking about the many barriers that people have to being able to access making decisions over their own lives. So whether that be the various degrees of voter suppression laws that certainly are kind of sweeping their way through the South again, and through the Midwest again, or whether it just be the multiple responsibilities that Black people in particular have to juggle every single day. It really is our goal not to shame people for not participating, but to give people a reason to participate, to let people know and really connect to people's everyday experience why going to the polls, casting your ballot, bringing the people with you that you love and can also cast a ballot can actually change their lives. And we don't get to do that, right, if we're not kind of doing our work to make sure that we're putting forward people who are visionary and accountable and sharp. If we're not doing our work to make sure that we're educating folks about what's at stake and why this actually matters to you and why you can't leave it for somebody else to deal with. And if we're not at the same time really challenging the power structures and the decision makers that make it almost impossible for people to access those decisions on their own. And so I like to say that because I know over the next 9 days, everybody on this call will be hearing some form of not voter shaming. And I want to say that I think we should spend our energies more productively by talking to people about why Black people are such a force and why it's important for us to unlock our potential. Not for Democrats or Republicans, but for ourselves, and for the sake of being able to say that we were clear about what we wanted to accomplish, and we did it. Last thing I want to say before I think I turn it over to the homies here is this. I spent almost all of my time thinking about, working for, and dreaming about how it is that we make Black people powerful in every aspect of our lives. And the first thing that I think is really important in that process is giving us something to fight for. And so I would hope that for each of you, as you are listening to me go on and on about why this moment is important, that you're really thinking to yourself, like, what would it feel like if you were powerful in every aspect of your life? What would change for you? What would be better for you? What would be better for the people that you love and care about? And that feeling, I want it to drive you, not just for the next 9 days, but for the rest of your life. We have a lot of work to do, we are up against a big monster, but I fully and fundamentally believe that if we stay focused, if we stay organized, if we stay connected, and if we stay clear, then we 100% will win. I think that's all I gotta say for now.
What really stuck out to me was the fact that they said that if you attend a HBCU, it's probably instilled in you that you just have to go the extra mile to fight for what's right for you. It's always going to be a reason for you to fight. Therefore, you are somewhat prepared already. And after recently being a part of the Hail Mary movement and, you know, trying to stand up for what's right as a student, it made me, I wouldn't say kind of emotional, because it's like, I feel like we're doing something that we're supposed to be doing, something that's already in our plan, something that we already have the strength for doing. And for one, it's not going unnoticed, which is the least of our worries, but for it's just being recognized and things are being fixed. And where I think it's important as it relates to voting and our voices, I think that because we have the strength to do something as simple as the Hail Mary movement or just protesting as African American students at HBCU, that if we have that type of strength to get our voices heard, that we should have the same strength to make our voices heard. And I think it's important that not only we push ourselves, but push others and hold our friends and family and their friends and family accountable of getting out there to vote, because it's possible and we can do it. So that's how I feel about it.
A leader in the past movement, how do you think that as a student body and student leadership, you can transfer those energies to getting students excited about the advocacy of voting, just as you got them in the movement excited about standing up for the
I'll say it takes first the entire team of SGA, and it's about us ensuring that we're educating students the correct way on these information about these amendments and how this could affect them in the future. I feel as college students, sometimes we feel that things won't affect us right now because we're in college, this is our prime, we're so busy that we just tend to look over things, but we're not thinking long-term of how this could affect us in the future. So the biggest thing for my team is ensuring that we're, one, educating students, keeping them informed, and going to grab students to come to these events and these engagements, which is tough, but we're ensuring we're doing our part to get that done as well. So.
What advice could you give to best mobilize HBCU students to get active in voting?
Well, voter participation, civic participation is not episodic, and that it should be something that is constantly going on. And so right now it seems like, and I'm on the outside looking in, you all have come together and you've done a tremendous effort of education and engagement, and that's the first part. And then you've got a plan to bring people to the polls. That's the second part. So you've got to educate the people. You've got to energize them and give them the reason why and take them to the polls. And you're going to the polls together on the 30th?
Yes.
And doing some other things. So that's important. But you need to begin to continue the dialogue. So on the November 7th, no matter who wins, that the people that you voted for or didn't vote for, you get a letter out from the SGA and the groups that are co-sponsoring this event, and anybody else you can get to sign on and say, you know, we are the collaboration of these groups. We represent X numbers of people. And if you look at the HBCU community, there's 700,000 full-time enrolled students in HBCUs, PBIs. You can use a big number to show the breadth of it. And if you have Greek letter associations and on, we represent all of these people. We voted. This is our platform. Two things. We want to be on your transition team, so we'll have a voice at the table. And secondly, we want to be on the transition team, and then you want to talk to them about appointments, whether you voted with them or not. When the vote is, well, first, if the vote is not over, the other thing, and I need to back up, there's something needs to happen before that, and that is on election day, you're not just taking people to the polls, but you have to protect your vote, because your vote's only valid if it's fully counted, and of course Florida has a bad history in that regard. And so you need to work with the National Bar Association, National Conference of Black Lawyers. You need to work with the BALSA, anybody who's in the law. You need to have a group of people who you've identified will protect your interests from the time they cut open the protection around the ballots and show people that there's nothing in it. You've got to be in that room, if not personally. Make sure you've got people there. And then you've got to have poll watchers. And then you've got to have all of those areas covered that will ensure that the people that you get out to vote their vote will be counted. It's always good to bring people at the end of the day, watch the outcomes, to celebrate it, but importantly, get yourself and your agenda on the agenda of whoever is in there. You show up, you tell them we voted, this is what we want, this is what we can do for you, and this is what we expect from you. And then we need to have a training program for the next cohort of elected officials. We could do that with student government, we could do it with National Black Caucus state legislators. I know Congressional Black Caucus has a training program. NAFEO has one for HBCU students. Somehow we need to get the word out and get more dollars so that people who are interested, not just in running for office, but certainly if you're interested in running for office, but if not, there's a lot of other people that are critical to the marketing piece, the media buys. That's big money. People who make money off of campaigns are those who buy the media ads. So any communications majors, any business majors, you've got to have trustworthy people who will be the treasurers and other things. But we need to then institutionalize and grow a program so that our students are educated, prepared, inspired, connected, and can be in place so that we can all celebrate and get more HBCU students in elective office, appointed office, anointed office, and other offices.
Thank you. As far as moving forward and sitting at the table with those who we don't necessarily agree with, because I know with us, if we don't agree with it, and especially when we're going around the current administration, it's very easy to disregard instead of having that thought of how we can come to the table, even though we have our differences and we may see things differently, but we don't know exactly how the election will pan out. And we should be educated on, the necessary steps to come to the table and have those discussions without the riffraff of the personal feeling.
It generally starts with a letter saying who we are. People care about numbers, and the reason it's important when I say HBCU students tank, when I go to meet with members of Congress, when I go in the 18 states where I meet with state legislators, their legislative directors have given them a sheet saying, okay, Bethune-Cookman has about 4,000 students, but according to our record, 20 of them voted, or whatever the reality is, they have those data. So when I go in, or if I'm asking for a meeting, I say this is who we are, and I optimize it. 4,000 students, they're active and engaged, they brought out the whole community, they did a week-long this, that, and the other, they're focused, they have made a difference in terms of the visiting Secretary DeVos, they made a difference in terms of the future of a current sitting president, they're active and engaged. They need to hear that, and then you get to the table. When you get to the table, if you disagree, and you'll disagree with everybody. I have met with every president since Reagan. If you are not in the room, you are counted out. My position doesn't change. What we're asking for does not, it changes because of evolution, like it's more technology and whatever the current 21st century asks are. But none of that changes. You go in with your same agenda, you hold yourself high, and you tell them why you matter to them. So when Trump said, I'm going to make part of my agenda the revitalization of areas of high distress in urban areas, I wrote a letter to him and I said, you cannot revitalize urban areas in America if you don't involve HBCUs. Disproportionate percentages of our colleges and universities are in areas of high distress. We have engineers, we have people now who are building housing. We have our medical schools, our public health schools, our nursing schools are offering public health, the people of least advantage, on and on. Tell them what we have. You can't do it. We can do the infrastructure. We can lay all the infrastructure. We can do the marketing. We can do the law. Everything that you need in order to revitalize your communities, and you can't revitalize them around us. And get a foot at the game. Then you get a call from HUD. It does not matter if you agree. What matters, it does not even matter if you find a lot of what is being espoused abhorrent. If your voice is missing, you're missing. There's not even anybody there who will say, and if you are not there, somebody else is there, and I'm going to look you in the eye, I'm going to tell you why. My 700,000 students are going to make America strong. You want America strong? America can't go anywhere with disproportionate percentage of black boys locked up in prison, disproportionate percentages of women and infants in trouble because you're cutting CHIP and you're cutting SNAP and those types of things. Got to have the dialogue. Got to be at the table. If you find that it's totally futile, well, another thing, I think it's always good to have an inside-outside piece, right? So somebody's at the table, but while somebody's at the table, somebody's on the outside. I've been outside lots and lots. It's a good thing. I'm outside. Now, if you find out that inside is not working, you can take another approach. But I think it's good to be inside and outside. Somebody's got to be outside who's elevating it. Or at some point, you walk out. If you find that it's futile, have a plan in advance. So you're going to go down, you're going to put it up. If you're disrespected, if you're dismissed, if jokes that aren't funny are told, if racism and bigotry is rising high, you walk out and you have a press conference in front of the meeting spot. But the engagement in some manner, whether it's Twitter, whether or not it's at the table, whether or not it's in court. We've taken several of the issues that we thought were important and illegal actions taken to court. It takes a long time, but we also do administrative bodies, and of course, President Grimes is an expert in that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Legacy is not on the program, but one thing about it, I say legacy 1,000 times. I feel like I said it 2,000 times a day. Dr. Bethune, she's a cornerstone for liberation as far as advocacy, not only at just Bethune-Cookman or Daytona or Florida, but the world. And one of her most powerful and most famous speeches is "What Democracy Means to Me." And I challenge all of y'all to listen to it. They actually have audio of that speech. And she goes in depth of what America means to her. Not necessarily what Black America means to her, but what we're owed. And what we could live up to, and what we have taken the country, well, back then, where we have brought the country from, where we came from. So if Legacy wants to make any comments, highlighting the importance of our voting and our advocacy as being a part of Bethune-Cookman University, combined with the legacy of Dr. Bethune.
First, I have to just say to you that thank you so very much for being here with our students, and thank our students for inviting you. And each of you know how very proud I am of you and what you are doing here at Bethune-Cookman University. Because what you're doing is taking the stand of your founder. Mrs. Bethune truly was the first civil rights fighter. She was truly the first. When you think of a young lady at 28 years old in 1904 coming here to Daytona Beach to say, I'm going to build me a school, when they sold her a city dump as a joke, but she saw a university. And so we still continue 114 years. And Bethune-Cookman College, University, our founder, we have always fought for what was right. And you are continuing that legacy today. You are standing up, you're doing your research, you're not just jumping out there saying something, you have your facts together, and you're standing firm on what you believe. And as the president said to some of you last week, even when you're standing against him, when you think that there's something that needs to be done, when you do it decently and in order and respectful, you have that right. You have the right to differ with us. You have that right. So you bring your facts and you continue in the great legacy of our founder. This election is very, very important to each of us. These amendments are important, but also the next governor of the state of Florida will appoint 3 justices of the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court just ruled that the present governor cannot do it. We went to court on that because they were trying to do it. The next governor will appoint. So everyone needs to think about that. Who will those 3 appointments be? And when we think about the midterm election, which is this year, who is going to Congress? Look at those elections. Because you've got to be, we think that it does not matter. Your financial aid, your Pell Grants, all of this is voted on by those people. And it affects you now. We know how it is with financial aid. All of you are experiencing these things. You need to know who we're sending to Washington, who we're sending to Tallahassee, because it does affect you. And even here locally, do you realize as students here at Bethune-Cookman, we have 4,000 students. You can control who sits in City Hall and who sits on the county bench representing you. And that is the biggest fear. That is the biggest fear for everyone here in Volusia County. If Bethune-Cookman students ever got organized and decided to vote in masses, you would control City Hall. Because you would be voting for the mayor and you would be voting for the person who represents this area. And that's where you can imagine in the 60s, y'all don't even know who Stokely Carmichael is, do you? Oh, look him up. Oh, yeah, that's right. That's where you got that from, see?
California.
Right, and he truly was controversial. But our president allowed us to bring him here against the Board of Trustees and against the city fathers. But Dr. Richard B. Moore said we had the right to listen to opposing opinions because that's what higher education is about. Understand why you're here. Higher education is to train your minds so you can sit at the table with different opinions and be able to challenge people and come out understanding the issue and fighting for what you believe in. I love you. Continue doing what you're doing. Following in the footsteps of your founder.
And one legacy point as a legacy of Dr. Dorothy Height, who of course followed in the footsteps of Mary McLeod Bethune. First thing, as the First Lady pointed out, Sister Bethune is known and dubbed the First Lady of the Struggle. So I was excited to see that the students here at Bethune-Cookman are still struggling. But the other thing that she suggested was that she said, and she raised her hand and said, if I take one finger and I touch someone, they probably won't feel it. She said, if I take 2 fingers and touch someone, they might feel it. But if I take all 5 fingers in a hand and bring them together as one, I can land a mighty blow. And she said that in launching the National Council of Negro Women, the broadest group of African-American women coming together, not just in America, but on the continent of Africa and elsewhere in the diaspora. And that's what excited me about what I saw and when I was invited to come here. The fact that the different groups came together as one to land a mighty blow. And I know you will, and we'll be on the sidelines to help in any way that our help may be welcome.
All right, on Tuesday, we will be marching to the polls. At 7:30, we will meet in front of Whitehall to march to the polls. And just giving you all a nugget, since we're on legacy, a long time ago, it was in our original Faith Hall. The KKK came to visit Dr. Bethune. And I know a lot of us know about that story, we've heard about it. But a lot of us think that they came because she was a black woman educating people. And that wasn't necessarily the fact. The KKK marched up the same Ave that we crossed to go to class, well, that you crossed to go to class, I crossed. Because Dr. Bethune was registering people to vote in this city. So let's keep in mind that you know, we're students and we're part of the legacy in an academic way, but we also have a tie as far as politics and doing what's right politically and being politically engaged. So it's so much more than going to class. I know in the past week I've heard like they need to go to class, go to class. But like Mr. Brown said, this is a place to elevate your mind. This is higher education. So even outside of the classroom, we have a responsibility to us. It's not just Dr. Bethune, because she did a whole lot while she was here. But we have a responsibility to each other and what she said, the young people. So we're doing exactly what we're supposed to do. So let's keep that in mind as we pull our friends, pull your organizations, talk to your professors about organizing for students to march to the polls on Tuesday. I really appreciate all of y'all for coming. Ms. Williamson, do you have a comment? Ms. Brown?
For Tuesday, if the SGA and all, let's make sure that our students have the voters registration cards with them and an ID card with them too when we go on Tuesday. And if you could check, I know we had some registration done, voters registration. If we can send out something to students to say, if you register to vote, if you have not gotten your card, maybe come to the library so we can make some calls or something. If you could do that, you know, maybe tomorrow. And we can check online to see. So when we get down there on Tuesday, if we find all of these problems out on Monday, we can start working on them, have them solved by Tuesday. If we don't have them solved by Tuesday, I know the president also said we will have another march on the actual day of voting to our precinct right here in this building. So we'll be doing it twice. So if they have any problems, yeah, we have a precinct right in Perry, right here. So we will be doing it twice, Tuesday and on the day of voting. So let's find out if our students have any problem, because I've been here and some students have not gotten their cards back. So we also help us with that.
Also add to that election. So you're able to do that on site. So there should be no excuse why students are not in attendance. And it does start with our student leaders, which are you guys, empowering other students to want to march to the polls so their voice can be heard. So this is a serious, serious election. So we need to go out and do what we have to do.
All right, y'all have an amazing evening. Thank you.
You're broken down and tired of living life on the merry-go-round, and you can't find a fighter, but I see it in you, so we gon' walk it out. Move mountains, we gon' walk it out and move mountains. And I'll rise up, I'll rise like the day. I'll rise up, I'll rise unafraid. I'll rise up, and I do it 1,000 times again. And I'll rise up, I like the waves. I'll rise up, in spite of the ache. I'll rise up, and I do it 1,000 times again. The silence isn't quiet, and it feels like it's getting hard to breathe. And I know you feel like dying, but I promise we'll take the world to its feet. Move mountains, bring it to its feet. Move mountains. And I'll rise up, I'll rise like the day. I'll rise up, I'll rise unafraid. I'll rise up, and I do it 1,000 times again. You for that we have each other. And we will rise, we will rise, we'll rise. Oh, we'll rise. I'll rise up, rise like the day. I'll rise up in spite of the ache. I will rise 1,000 times again.